All right. Pipelines. This subject is really awesome. You have a lot of ways to implement a pipeline.
Okay.
Right. Let's try to figure out. I will show you one pipeline that I've built for a Canadian company, and then I will try to explain step by step what it's doing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, on Azure, we do have a pipelines menu that we have pipelines, environments, releases, libraries, task groups, deployment groups, all of these features. I will intend to tackle the pipelines, environments, and releases.
Mm-hmm.
Pipelines. Pipelines usually is where the CI is contained, the continuous integration. It will run the build, generate the artifacts, and upload somewhere. For instance, in this pipeline API dev ARM64, this is a pipeline that is building a .NET code, deploying an image on ARM64. I mean, it's building an image targeting ARM64 architecture and then uploading to the repository hosted on Azure. If we edit here, we can see that it's really straightforward. What is doing this pipeline is just grabbing the sources from a repository, from a specific branch, and then running a job. This job is called Legacy API. This job, the configuration of this job, there is none, basically. I will tackle this in a new pipeline, don't worry. I'm just going through everything. And then inside this job, you have an action that build and push. This action is from Docker itself. It's just what it's doing is I'm pointing a Docker file. This action will build the Docker file and then send it to this container registry that is hosted on Azure with this path. So the complete image will be available on the repository itself. But this is a pipeline, but you see that it's only building, it's not deploying, right? Because it was separated. You can also do deploys here using the same pipeline, like, we are starting, I want to test something quickly. You can add a new agent and then add a new task. Let's just say Kubernetes deploy. And then here it will ask you for a Kubernetes service that in this case, I have a lot of Kubernetes cluster in this account. And then you can do everything in one pipeline. But I found that it's really not as useful as it appears to be because it will have some problems. Like if you do the deployment inside the same pipeline, you will have a lot of issues regarding separating the environment variables. And this will not be an easy task. So what I usually recommend is the pipeline is just to build for the CI part, just to compile the application and generate the build itself. And the releases is what grabs the build generated by the pipeline and deploy on the server. In this case, in the API dev ARM64, generate a Docker image, pushes into a repository hosted on Azure. The release itself, the API dev release, if we edit here, it grabs the artifact generated by the source pipeline. So the output of the pipeline itself, which is a Docker image, a path of the Docker image, it will trigger this release that is set up to trigger automatically because this is a continuous deployment release. Since it's dev, so every time that a developer pushes into the develop branch, it will trigger the build. After the build is complete, it will trigger the release.
Yes.
And then the release, it will have only one stage that is running on an agent. I will tackle this agent soon. That is just doing a command called kubectl apply. That is applying the new YAML with the last tag build. If you see here, I can grab from, this is a variable extracted from the artifact generated by the pipeline that is contained the build ID. So in here, I will have the full path of the pushed image by the pipeline and also the latest release ID. This is just one approach. It will have a lot of ways of implementing this. I chose inline configuration just to have a more visual approach on what it's doing, but we will also have a direct integration. You can have installed by Helm. This is one simple way that I found. And then it's just applying and then finish. But this is for dev, right? Dev is really straightforward. If we break dev, nobody cares. It's dev. But what about production? Production. We do have the API master because the master branch is on everything that is in production in this case. If we edit, we will have a really similar pipeline, just using an older version of the task, but it's the same thing. It will build a specific Docker file for this code. It will tag with the build ID, that this build ID is used on the release pipeline, pushes to repository, and then it will go to the release that is changing. Because on the release, we have two environments, staging and production. The initial part is the same. So the initial part regarding the artifact, it will grab the output from the pipeline. In this case, the API master ARM64. It will have an alias. I can call it anything. This is just the standard of the pipeline. So I will keep it. And then you see that there is some sort of arrow, some sort of line connecting the artifact to the staging, right? This means that this staging step, it will run automatically after detecting a new artifact. So each deployment, each build, it will encapsulate to a Docker file, and then this release pipeline will detect that, there's a new master Docker file available, Docker image available, sorry. It will download and trigger the staging. The staging follows the same pattern as the deployment, so no biggies on that. And then the good thing here regarding, I clicked the wrong button. Let's go back. The good thing in here is regarding the production, because on every build, it will go directly to staging, but the production will hold for a manual intervention. On each step, you'll have these pre-deployment conditions. You can change if this step should trigger after release, after stage itself, if you have another stage like testing. Only after I approve testing, we will need to run the stage. You can do that as well, or manual only. In this case, production required manual intervention. So in this way, we'll have when it was approved, which version was approved, and who did that and when. So it's really more trackable. Also, on this, you can select specific users, like if you add a team member of your team, but you don't want them to approve, no worries. You can limit this approval just by you. If I can limit just me as an approval. So just I will have the power to go to production on this specific release. So why am I showing you this way? Like building separately and releasing afterwards. Because of the easy part that is error handling. Like if we do a deployment on the API production, the production API here. If we tackle this goes to production and throws an error, and I see on my observability platform, let's say, and I see on New Relic that errors begin to throw up, I can roll back just by a simple click. I can do this because this is a version number created. This is the last version on 25th of last month. I can just click on production of that specific version. It will go to the production logs on the agent and click on deploy again. No new compilation is needed. So you don't need to tackle with recompiling, with anything. It will grab the already build image and redeploy it again. So in a case of the production is down, or we have a production error that needs to be solved quickly and need to roll back the version, this is awesome because you will use less time, no compilation needed, it's already compiled, and then just click and deploy. One button solves everything. So
like an emergency backup, no? It's like
yeah,
yeah,
like emergency backup. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Like because of depends on how the way that the infrastructure is implemented. Sometimes it's hard to do a rollback in this way, tackling each piece by its own responsibility. We can go back release really quickly, really instant. So it's really I found this way really awesome and really life-saving. Yeah. So going back a little bit, you mentioned that you were using GitHub Actions, right? And the IP is changing and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
We do have an option here on Azure itself that it's called agents and agent pools. By default, Azure gives you, I believe, 1800 minutes of build time for free, right?
Yeah, but I saw like I had to register and get approved to get that, so I did it. But so I'm not pretty sure. You have to explain me a little bit about the price higher. So it's like we have Azure and then we have that DevOps thing. So they work somehow together, but they are separated actually and built differently.
Oh, sorry, I didn't
Right.
understand you.
So you have to give me some information about the pricing, not about the exact number, but how is it working, calculated? They are calculating the bill or the amount on the bill by the minutes I use for a building pipeline, right?
Yes, it's calculated by the minutes for building and for release.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is the thing. You can host an agent, an pipeline agent everywhere. You can host it even on your own machine if you want. So this is quite handy to overcome that limit of 1800 minutes and also to have a fixed IP. What I usually do is like if we implement an infrastructure on Kubernetes, we can deploy also a Docker image containing a build agent. So it will use just this build agent, not the Azure itself. So you have control about the IP and you have control about who is receiving your code also. And also, if you build for ARM64 architecture, you will probably need one of those as well. In this case, I do have an ARM64 pool with a bunch of agents. In this list, I do have a lot of agents that is offline because of the auto recovery process. It's a thing about this project itself because we do have a React. Long story short, we do have a project that uses a lot of RAM and crashes sometimes. So it has been implemented an auto recovery on the agent, and then it will spin up another agent. But I mean, so two types of agents: hosted by Azure Pipelines, that is billable by the minute, You have, I believe, something around 1800 minutes free. Let me check. What is parallel jobs? Yeah, free tire, one parallel job up to 1800 minutes per month. This is one other thing. Azure is also bills by parallel job. For instance, on the ABP, we will have the authentication server, the dbmigrator, but it's not hosted, the API, and the front end, basically, right? The necessary to run the application, the auth server, the API, and the front end. It will have three. If you don't have concurrency jobs, it will enqueue and it will only run one per time. After one is completed, you go to another and you go to another.
Yes, I get it.
And yeah, for self-hosted as well, you can have as much as self-hosted agents as you want, but you must purchase the parallelism. That's a Microsoft catch there. Yeah, going back to the deployment. Targets. We do have a lot of targets. A lot of targets. By targets, I mean targets of the application. If you will deploy on x64 or ARM architecture. I bring ARM architecture into this discussion because the ABP framework is fully ARM compatible. You can run, it's running .NET 8, which is ARM compatible, and in my experience, it's worth looking because sometimes you can reduce the cost and increase the performance on that. But just a suggestion to have in mind as well. Okay. Pipelines. Let's create a new pipelines. Let me show you another project. No, not this one. I do have a lot of browsers open, each one with an example.
Don't worry.
Let me see, pipelines. Yeah, this is another good example. What I was saying, in this example, the deployment is done by the pipeline itself. It's not done by the release pipeline. In this case, if we edit the platform build, this is using another approach also to build. The cluster itself will detect when have changes on the final release, on the final artifact, and will do the deployment. I was using also GitHub Actions on this, so it took my attention on that. But this is another approach. And then going to the last thing, this is a test CI that was made from another DevOps. And this is deploying the full ABP framework as you purchase. If we edit here, you'll see that it is not UI, it's pure command line. There's a lot of stage because we do need to install the SDK on the machine that is using. In this case, is using only Azure machines. We do need to install the Volo CLI. That is a requirement to build the ABP itself. Install the libs. You will also need to do this on your Angular project. In this case, it's doing on Blazor and on auth server. And then it's using another way of doing deployment. That is, this is just doing the template of the build regarding the template. I mean the Docker image, where to store it, and all of that stuff that I showed you before. Just another way of doing that. It's executing and creating the migration scripts, publishing the migrations, and this is the major difference because instead of using the release pipelines, this is doing something. This is doing by hand. It's logging on the Azure on a service principal environment variable that is grabbing from the KeyVault. Is setting the template and it's deploying to Helm. Helm is another way to deploy it. it's a huge YAML with everything that a project needs to run. It's just one file containing everything. We can tackle that if you want, but let's focus on the easiest part at this moment.
Yes.
And then deploying and so on and so forth. Major difference that I want to highlight here. YAML versus if I go here on the pipeline and create new pipeline, we have a classic editor hide below here. This classic editor provides you with an UI to build a pipeline. It's really more user-friendly. Even if you're a fan of CLI, it's really easier to see things through here because on the code, in my experience, you will have a lot of hard time on expanding the code without being messy. Like adding new complexities, adding new stages, adding new environments. I would prefer to use the classic pipelines because it's really more straightforward. Classic pipelines is this UI. You can add new agents, new everything, and expand as necessary. And then that's it. So the differences between the classic pipeline and the new pipeline. New pipeline, just code, just a YAML, and you will tackle this. There is a helper, like if you want to do a new task, there is a taskbar here you can that is helping you to do. But as soon as you click on add, it will just add the snippet code here. You will have to ident and to fill with another attributes as well. And it's not that easy to find what kind of attributes it's available for each task. So personally speaking, I found that that is easier, and the learning curve it's really lower to using the classic pipeline to implement everything. All right, perfect. So the next thing that I want to tackle about, it's about the Azure KeyVault. It's basically a repository of secrets. You can store all the secrets that are important to your application here, even if it's a production application or if it's a development application. To give an example, if I will integrate with Google Maps, I will need to have a Google Key API, right? Instead of storing that on the code or storing that as a variable inside the pipeline, you can store that as a secret here on the KeyVault itself. Let me grab the development. Yeah, that's the development. In this KeyVault of examples, you have secrets, and on the secrets you'll have what are the secrets that we're storing. In this case, just for demo purposes, is just storing the configuration crypto IV. That is just an IV for a cryptographic key, and the key itself. One thing cool about this KeyVault, let me grab the correct project. Just to give you a parallel on how to insert. This is your project, right? We do have the app settings. You can correlate all the app settings into secrets on the Azure itself. Oh, sorry, clicking something wrong. Yeah. Meaning that, for instance, if you want to tackle the self URL on the app, you see that's a little double dashes here. It's how to do the concatenation itself. To insert a new value referencing this self URL, you will need to do something like this. App, which is the parent of the configuration, -- self URL, and then enter the secret, like HTTPS bitaste.com. And then enable create. After creating this, you'll have the current version of the self URL. and I just enter your domain. This what I just did is the same of modifying by hand this value to the btaste.com to the secret that you want. But why storing? Sorry, but why storing on the KeyVault? Because it will offer you dynamicity to do not have the secrets hard coded, even though you do have an app settings.development and you can have an app settings.production. I would never store the keys, the connection strings, any sensitive information on files. I will store here on the KeyVault.
Yeah.
And how it does replace it? It does replace it like on the deployment, right? After the deployment, after you attach the KeyVault, this replacing of the path app self URL is done automatically after you reference the resources. So no worries on that.
Mm-hmm.
But here on the pipeline, you can also have like, oh, I need to build an Angular project that one of the parameters is a Google API because I do have an autocomplete. Let's just say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's create a new pipeline here. Configuration is code. No, configuration is code. No, come back. Okay. So new pipeline. Let's do the entire thing. Pipelines, new pipeline. Click on the classic editor. Here on the classic editor, you'll point to which repository are you referring to and which branch. Let's do the old develop in this example. Hit continue. And then it starts a little like a boilerplate template on what you want to deploy. If you want to deploy directly to app service or
Can
if
you
you
go
want to...
one step back because I
Sure.
want to see this again, like the classic one.
In this step, you mean?
Yes. So you choose the repository here.
Yes. Here you choose the
Okay.
repository. It's quite handy. You have a GitHub integration here as well. You have a Bitbucket. You have everything.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to use the repository here on the Azure DevOps itself, since I'm building the pipeline here. Offers a great integration. So as much Microsoft product as you use, less headache you will have.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So in this case, I just selected the repository that I already have here and the default branch. Hitting continue, it will offer a template. In this case, you can choose to deploy your application on different app services or even on a Kubernetes as well. We can talk about that later, no problem as well.
Mm-hmm.
In this example, we can apply for an Azure web app just to, let's do a Docker container. It will show the bare bones of the pipeline itself. The bare bones containing the source of the project. If you want to do a clean of the agent before downloading, like to not have caching files or none of that, like every copy, it's brand new.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have a lot of other options here that there is a lot of things that we'll not tackle at this moment, even to check out submodules if you have submodules on the Git, but there's another subject for another time. And then we'll have agents. Now the fun begins because on the agent, you can run. Agent is the name of the grouping of the tasks. You'll have one agent with multiple tasks on it. You can have another agent with multiple tasks on it. And on the agent, you can do a chained agent. Like the second agent, you only trigger after the one agent is completed. This is useful on the parallelism section. Like you don't need to wait the auth server to be completed to start building the pipeline. You can build both in parallel and then continue. This is one other thing also. Here on the agents, what kind of configuration do we have? We will have the agent pool, inherit from the pipeline. Here on the pipeline, we will have a lot of informations on how to do things on the format number, but in somewhere that I don't find agent pool on the pipeline itself. Do you have the agent pool? And on each agent, you have the agent pool configuration as well. If you will inherit from the pipeline, this configuration here, or you can set, agent pool number 1, it will go to the ARM64. The second, it will go to another. It's just a little bit of more dynamicity that is allowed. But inherit, it's fine because if you change here, it will change on the entire pipeline. So it's also easy to manage. And then the task itself. I'm not sure why, but Azure does that. When you add a new task, it always goes to the first version instead of the last one. So always after inserting a task, change to the last version. Let's keep it updated because it's really handy. That's a lot of new content going on, and it's really easy to do that. So in this case, to build an image, what this is requiring is a container registry. What is this container registry? Let me show you as well. In this case, I do think that is called BrainyBox. BrainyBox container registry. It is a repository for Docker images provided by Azure. So if you will run Docker on your infrastructure, you can create a container registry that will easily integrate into your pipeline. It's really more easy to manage the connections itself. So select the repository. The repository here, let's just grab an image repositories. Let's grab just build site. Build site. What is this container repository? It's where the build image, it will be pushed. And you will have commands here, build, push, login, logout, start, stop. Why login, logout if you're using the integration on Azure, right? But this is an option if you host it externally. Like if you're using GitHub registry or GitLab registry, you will need to do a login task, and then after build, push to log into the repository itself. Since we are using the Azure, we don't need that. We can do build and push. That is our goal here. The Docker file, it will you will need to do the full path of the Docker file. The build context, this is interesting in the case of one repository, multiple projects. You can send just the context necessary to build the image instead of sending all the files. This is a little tweaks to make it faster, but we can tackle that later. And then the build itself. We can also, as I mentioned before, do a new agent job. And I can call this agent as build and push code. And then on this agent, I can call deploy. And on the deployment, we can select the dependencies to only be triggered after the build and push be ready. And you can configure the deployment here directly. This is useful for testing. I would not recommend use for production, but for testing, it's really handy. It's really like easy to do, right? I'm just showing you this because it's for testing. It's really saving as well. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention, the KeyVault integration on the pipeline, because this can be handy in the future. Let me use the Brainy as example. Where is Brainy? Brainy is here. Let's edit this platform build. If you need to extract a secret on the KeyVault that I showed you, like the app self URL, on a specific task of an agent, like I need to inject this URL on the environment settings on Angular because it will build it will build the Angular with the correct environment variables, and then we will publish. But you'll need to extract those variables from a KeyVault. In this case, you will have a task called KeyVault, download KeyVault secrets. And this is quite interesting because you will need to select a subscription. In this case, you select my subscription. But you will also need to allow the access on the KeyVault. It's not that simple in this case. Let's use the Brainbox Dev. And on this, how to allow the KeyVault being access to the pipeline. After selecting a subscription, you will have a button here on Authorize. You need to authorize and then go to this link, Manage. On this page to manage the connection to your account, it will have a service principal. Service principal is a form of identification that Azure resources uses to allow or deny access to another resources. In this case, the pipeline is using this long name Azure identification. We can copy that, go to the KeyVault, and go into access policies, and then I create another access policy. With the secrets permission, I can give just the list and get. Next. And here on the principal, I can correlate this identity that we extract from the connection between Azure DevOps and Azure Portal. And we are saying this. On this, there is two, but let's grab the first one. On this exactly identity, I am allowing to access the KeyVault and grab all the keys necessary to do the build. You see? Because otherwise, when you run the pipeline, it will throw an error that the KeyVault is not accessible. But no, it's just not. It's not the clear. Just the clearance that was not done. So that is tricky as well. And it have a secret filter if you want to just to import to the pipeline. That's the secret, starting with Angular something. Just an example. In this case, let's do everything. Another thing, when you add this KeyVault task, it's only available for the next task. It will not be available for all the pipeline unless you check this, make secrets available to the whole job. Otherwise, just the next task, if we can do a console, can we do, no, scripts. That script. Oh, run scripts. There is a, what's the name of shell script? Yeah, let's try to do a shell script. Shell script. PowerShell, I can be PowerShell. Okay. Inline, that's it. We are recovering this, and let's remove this selected task. And on this, let's use that variable that we created. Let's try to use that. The keyboard, let's just grab the exact name of the variable. ABP self URL. ABP self URL. And then let's save in queue. Let's just see what happens. Best. I'm building on my own. Okay. Let's use hosted pipelines agent specification, Windows latest, branch tag. I'll develop, save and run. Meanwhile, let me just mute my other notifications. That is here away. Okay. No host problem has been purchased or granted. All right. There is another build running. Oh, come on. Let's do Azure pipelines, Azure specification. In this latest test, here is inherits, here it does inherit. This is a PowerShell script. Okay, safe builds. Let's see if now it works. The Azure seems to be really slow today from my end. Pipeline is not valid. Yeah, I know that's not valid. Run new. This is complaining because I don't have a main branch. This is just a repository that I use for testing and for everything. Let's try to run force run on the on any branch. I just want to show you that it's extracting the variable. Cute. No parallelism has been granted. All right, I do have a bugged account. Sorry for that. But what would happen is on this build, yeah, I need to fix that. It will extract all the variables from the KeyVault and you'll make it available. And the way that you will use is through this $, and then between parentheses, the name of the variable itself. Exactly the same as you entered on the secrets on the Azure KeyVault. You can use this for any type of reasons. This I would just write host, but on the scenario that you are building your Angular project and you need to have a specific API key on that, it's really handy as well. And one thing to pay attention, if you will use the variables from the KeyVault in more than one task, you do need to select this, make secrets available to the whole job. Otherwise, just the next task, it will contain this variable. And if you use anywhere else on the screen, on the pipeline, you will throw an error. So that's another thing. Will arrive, I'm sure. So you will need to deploy the auth server, the host, and the Angular, the minimum to publish, right?